Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning, and for the first time in years, there's no alarm clock screaming at you to surrender your dreams. No immediate panic about emails, deadlines, or the crushing weight of obligations that aren't truly yours. Instead, you lie there for a moment and ask yourself a question that terrifies most people more than death itself. If I didn't have to work to survive, what would I actually do with my life? The silence that follows this question is deafening, isn't it? Because somewhere deep in that silence, you realize something profoundly disturbing. You don't know. You've become so consumed by the mechanics of survival that you've forgotten what it means to truly live. You've traded your humanity for security, your dreams for a paycheck, your time, the most precious resource you'll ever possess, for the illusion of freedom. Today we will expose the truth about the system you live in, why you may feel trapped without even realizing it, and how to break free from the invisible walls that have been built around your existence. And I promise you, the final revelation I will share will be the most powerful of them all, a truth that can completely change the way you see your life, your work, and your freedom. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like, share this video, and let your voice be heard in the comments. This is not just another piece of content. It may be the moment you start questioning the very structure of the life you have been told to accept. Stay until the end, because what we will uncover may shake the foundations of how you view your place in this world. But here's the paradox that will shake you to your core. What if the very system you believe grants you freedom is actually the most sophisticated form of slavery ever devised? What if every choice you think you're making freely, where you live, what you eat, who you spend time with, even how you define success, has been predetermined by forces so subtle, so deeply embedded in the fabric of modern life, that you mistake their chains for your own desires? Consider this unsettling reality. A medieval serf worked approximately 150 days per year. The rest was leisure, family time, community celebration. Today, you work roughly 250 days annually, not counting the mental energy consumed by work-related stress during your so-called free time. You have less genuine leisure than a feudal peasant, yet you call yourself free. How is this possible? The answer lies in a truth so disturbing that most people spend their entire lives avoiding it. Modern slavery doesn't announce itself with whips and chains. It whispers sweet promises of choice, while quietly stealing the one thing that can never be replaced: your life force, your time, your irreplaceable moments of existence. It convinces you that you're climbing a ladder toward freedom, while ensuring that each rung takes you deeper into dependency. Think about the last truly spontaneous decision you made, one entirely free from financial considerations. When did you last wake up and think, what does my soul need today, rather than, what do I have to do today? If you can't remember, you're not alone. Millions of people have forgotten what it feels like to own their own time, to make choices based on inner calling rather than external pressure. The philosopher Erich Fromm once wrote about the marketing orientation of modern humans, where we see ourselves as products to be sold rather than beings to be fulfilled. You've internalized this so completely that you introduce yourself by what you do for money, not by who you are as a human being. Your worth has become synonymous with your economic output. Your identity has been hijacked by your job title. But what if I told you that this entire structure, this system that consumes your days and colonizes your dreams, is not inevitable? What if the cage you live in has no lock, and the door has been open all along? The only thing keeping you inside is the belief that outside lies chaos, poverty, meaninglessness. But what if that belief itself is the final, most sophisticated chain in your imprisonment? Here's the question that will either liberate you or terrify you beyond measure. Are you living your life? Or is your life being lived by forces you've never questioned? The answer to this question will determine whether you spend your remaining years as a free human being or as a highly sophisticated, willing slave. The stakes couldn't be higher, because unlike money, time cannot be earned back. Unlike possessions, your life force cannot be replaced. Every day you spend unconsciously serving a system that doesn't serve you is a day stolen from your one precious, irreplaceable existence. What comes next will challenge everything you've been taught about work, success, and freedom. It will force you to confront uncomfortable truths about the life you're living and the life you've abandoned in pursuit of security that never comes. But most importantly, It will show you something that the system desperately hopes you never discover. You have more power than you know, and freedom is closer than you think. The question is, are you ready to see how deep this rabbit hole goes? The tragedy of modern existence isn't that we're enslaved, it's that we've been convinced we're free while wearing chains we can't even see. The most brilliant aspect of contemporary control isn't physical force. It's the psychological architecture that makes you believe your cage is your choice. Friedrich Nietzsche warned us about this over a century ago when he spoke of the last man, a creature so domesticated, so comfortable in his mediocrity, that he no longer even dreams of greatness. You wake up each morning not because your body has rested and your spirit calls you to embrace the day, but because an economic system has declared that your time is no longer yours. The alarm clock isn't just waking you up. It's announcing that your life has been sold to the highest bidder before you've even opened your eyes. But how did we arrive at this psychological prison? The answer lies in what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious shared patterns of thought that shape entire civilizations. We've internalized a mythology so complete, so pervasive, that we mistake it for reality itself. This mythology whispers three devastating lies that keep you trapped: that your worth equals your productivity, that security can only come through submission to the system, and that there's no alternative to trading your life force for survival. The sociologist Max Weber identified this phenomenon as the iron cage of modern life, a world where bureaucracy, economic necessity, and rational efficiency trap individuals in systems from which escape feels impossible. But Weber couldn't have predicted how sophisticated this cage would become. Today's prison walls are made not of iron, but of debt, social expectations, and the constant fear of falling behind in an endless race toward nowhere. Consider the psychological manipulation embedded in the very language we use. Time is money. This phrase alone rewires your brain to see your existence as a commodity. Paying your dues, climbing the ladder, the grind never stops. These aren't innocent expressions. They're linguistic chains that train you to accept exploitation as virtue, exhaustion as honor, and the sacrifice of your humanity as necessary progress. Arthur Schopenhauer understood that most human suffering comes from wanting what we don't have and fearing the loss of what we do have. The modern economic system has weaponized this insight, creating artificial scarcity and manufactured desires that keep you perpetually dissatisfied. You work not just to survive, but to maintain an image of success that requires ever-increasing consumption. The car isn't just transportation, it's proof you matter. The luxury watch isn't for telling time, it's for telling others you have value. This creates what Viktor Frankl would recognize as a profound existential crisis. Frankl, who survived the ultimate deprivation of freedom in Nazi concentration camps, understood that humans can endure almost any suffering if they can find meaning in it. But the modern system offers the opposite: endless labor, stripped of genuine purpose, wrapped in the hollow promise of future rewards that never fully satisfy. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote about the anxiety that comes with radical freedom, the terrifying recognition that we are condemned to be free. But what if the system has solved this problem by offering you a different kind of sesh? Anxiety? Instead of the fear of freedom, you now live with the fear of losing your job, your status, your ability to pay your bills. This manufactured anxiety is more comfortable than existential freedom because it gives you something specific to worry about, something concrete to chase. It transforms the overwhelming responsibility of creating meaning into the manageable task of meeting expectations. The depth of this psychological conditioning becomes clear when you realize that most people introduce themselves by their job title, as if the human being and the economic function were identical. You've been trained to see yourself as a resource to be optimized, rather than as a consciousness to be fulfilled. Your creativity, your relationships, your spiritual growth, these become secondary to your career development. This is why retirement often triggers an identity crisis. If you've spent 40 years defining yourself by what you produce for others, who are you when the production stops? The system has so thoroughly colonized your sense of self that freedom feels like death. But here's where the cracks begin to show. This entire psychological architecture depends on your unconscious participation. The moment you begin to see it clearly, its power over you starts to weaken. The most insidious aspect of this new slavery isn't what it takes from you, it's what it convinces you to willingly give away. While you're focused on climbing the ladder, paying the bills, and meeting expectations, something far more precious is being systematically stolen: your ability to imagine a life not defined by work. Look around you. The cities are filled with people rushing from one obligation to another, eyes fixed on screens, ears plugged into devices, minds clouded with to-do lists. How many of them are truly living in the present moment? How many feel that their life belongs to them rather than to their employer, their creditors, or the relentless demands of constant productivity? This is what Karl Marx called alienation. But he could never have imagined how complete this separation would become. You spend years creating results you never own, for purposes you don't truly control, alongside colleagues who are also trapped in the same invisible chains. The alienation is total when you begin to measure your worth only through performance reviews, salary figures, and approval from superiors who see you as replaceable. But the consequences go deeper than professional dissatisfaction. Your very capacity for genuine experience begins to atrophy. When was the last time you felt truly present during a conversation without part of your mind calculating tomorrow's tasks? When did you last experience what psychologists call flow complete absorption in an activity chosen purely for its own sake? The system doesn't just consume your working hours. It colonizes your consciousness, turning even your rest into recovery time for more work. Consider the neurological impact of this constant pressure. Your brain, evolved for periods of intense focus followed by genuine rest, is now trapped in a state of chronic low-level stress. The amygdala, your fear center, remains partially activated as you unconsciously monitor threats to your economic security. This creates what researchers call allostatic load, the wear and tear on your body from chronic stress. You're literally aging faster because you're living in a state of perpetual fight-or-flight response to economic uncertainty. The debt system amplifies this biological stress response into a psychological prison. Credit cards, mortgages, student loans, they're marketed as tools for freedom but function as mechanisms of control. Once you owe, you must keep working to pay. The fear of losing your income becomes the leash that keeps you compliant. The bank doesn't need to punish you. The system ensures you will punish yourself with overwork to meet your obligations. This creates a feedback loop that's almost impossible to break. The more you work to pay your debts, the more exhausted you become. The more exhausted you become, the less capable you are of imagining alternatives. The less you can imagine alternatives, the more trapped you feel. The more trapped you feel, the more you accept that this is just how life island. Perhaps most tragically, this system has convinced you that hard work is the highest virtue, that your dignity comes from your labor. Society feeds you a narrative that success means climbing the ladder, buying more, upgrading constantly. The brilliance of this illusion is that it keeps you striving endlessly without questioning who placed the ladder there or where it truly leads. Your children are watching this performance and learning that this is what adulthood looks like. They're being conditioned to expect exhaustion, to accept that life will be hard, that they must compete relentlessly, that burnout is simply part of growing up. Rarely are they told that the system itself could be questioned, that there are other ways to live. This normalization is the final defense of the new slavery. If you believe the cage is the whole world, you will never try to escape. If you accept that life must be spent in constant toil for the privilege of survival, you will defend the very structure that imprisons you. You become not just a victim of the system, but its willing guardian, policing yourself and others who dare to question the arrangement. The most chilling realization is this: you may be living the only life you'll ever have in service to a system that views you as replaceable, while convincing yourself that someday after the next promotion, the next raise, the next milestone, you'll finally start living for yourself. But what if someday never comes? What if the price of security is everything that makes life worth living? Here's the revelation that terrifies the system more than any revolution. You were never born to be property, not of a master, not of a corporation, not of an economy. You were born with time as your only true wealth, and the way you spend that time is the ultimate expression of your freedom or your enslavement. The first act of rebellion is the most radical one. Stop agreeing. The walls of your cage are not made of unbreakable steel, they are made of agreements, habits, and fears that you have been conditioned to accept. The moment you withdraw your unconscious consent, the cage begins to weaken. This doesn't mean quitting your job tomorrow or abandoning all responsibilities. It means reclaiming control over your life in the spaces where the system is weakest. The great deception is that you must choose between security and freedom, between responsibility and authenticity. But what if this is a false choice designed to keep you trapped? History is filled with individuals who discovered a third option, using the system as a tool rather than letting it use them. They understood that freedom isn't the absence of constraints, it's the conscious choice of which constraints serve your deepest values. Start with this revolutionary act. Begin asking yourself questions the system hopes you never consider. If money were no object, how would you spend your day? Who would you spend it with? What would you create, learn, or explore? Then look at your current life and see where you can make space for even fragments of that vision, not someday, not when you retire, but now. Because the years you give away do not come back. Consider the radical philosophy of voluntary simplicity, not as deprivation, but as liberation. Every possession you don't need is a chain that binds you to the system. Every expense you can eliminate is time you can reclaim. The minimalist movement isn't about aesthetics. It's about recognizing that your relationship with stuff is actually your relationship with freedom. When you need less, you can work less. When you can work less, you can live more. Look to those who have already broken free. They're not mythic heroes or trust fund babies. They're people who decided to change the equation. The artist who refuses to trade their vision for mass appeal. The family that lives simply so they can spend more time together. The entrepreneur who builds a business that reflects their values instead of exploiting their energy. The writer who chooses meaning over money. They discovered what Viktor Frankl knew, that the last of human freedoms is the ability to choose your attitude in any given circumstances, to choose your own way. But rebellion requires more than individual action. It demands a fundamental shift in how you measure success. Stop defining your worth by the metrics the system gives you. A larger paycheck doesn't necessarily mean a richer life. A more prestigious title doesn't guarantee more meaning. The truest measure of success is the amount of your life you can live on your own terms. This shift in perspective reveals something profound. Work can be noble, creative, and fulfilling when it serves your humanity rather than draining it. The danger lies in the imbalance. When work expands to occupy every space of your existence. When it becomes the measure of your worth and the condition of your survival. At that point, you are no longer working to live, you are living to work. The rebellion also requires developing what we might call economic disobedience, the conscious choice to opt out of unnecessary participation in systems that don't serve you. This might mean seeking work that aligns with your values rather than just your financial needs. It might mean developing skills that free you from dependence on a single employer. It might mean surrounding yourself with people who value you for who you are, not what you produce. Most importantly, rebellion means recognizing that the structure of modern work is not inevitable. It is a human invention, and like all human inventions, it can be questioned, challenged, and changed. The great danger is believing it's as fixed as the laws of nature. The great hope is realizing it's not. Here is the truth so profound, so unsettling to every system of control, that once you truly see it, you can never return to the same unquestioning compliance. The system does not truly own you unless you believe that survival and fulfillment can only come through it. Every chain that binds you requires your unconscious participation to maintain its power. This is not merely philosophical abstraction. This is the most practical truth you will ever encounter. Right now, in this moment, you possess something that no corporation can purchase, no government can regulate, and no economic system can truly control. Your consciousness, your awareness, your ability to choose how you interpret and respond to your circumstances. Viktor Frankl, writing from the depths of a Nazi concentration camp, the ultimate laboratory of human control, discovered this indestructible core of freedom. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. If this truth held power in the most extreme deprivation of external freedom, how much more powerful is it in your current circumstances? The ultimate revelation is this. You have been living as if the cage were locked, when in reality, you hold the key. The door has been open all along. What keeps you inside is not the strength of the bars, but the depth of your conditioning to believe that outside lies only chaos, poverty, and meaninglessness. But this belief itself is the final, most sophisticated form of control. Consider the staggering implications of this realization. Every morning when you wake up in anxiety about work, You are choosing to give your mental energy to a system that profits from your stress. Every time you measure your worth by your productivity, you are voluntarily surrendering your humanity to metrics that were never designed to capture what makes you valuable. Every moment you spend believing that you have no choice is a moment you actively create your own prison. This doesn't mean your external circumstances are irrelevant. Bills are real, responsibilities exist, and systemic change is necessary. But it means that even within these constraints, you possess infinite freedom in how you meet them. You can work your job as a conscious choice rather than a compulsive necessity. You can engage with economic reality as a game you're playing rather than a prison you're trapped in. You can transform every act of apparent submission into a strategic decision made from your own center. The deepest magic happens when you realize that freedom and presence are synonymous. Every moment you spend truly present, aware of your breath, connected to your body, conscious of your choices, is a moment stolen back from the machinery of unconscious consumption. Every act of genuine attention, every moment of authentic connection, every instance of creative expression becomes an act of resistance against a system that profits from your distraction and disconnection. This is why the system fears meditation, mindfulness, and any practice that brings you into direct contact with your own consciousness. An awakened person cannot be unconsciously controlled. Someone who knows their own mind cannot be easily manipulated by external pressures. A human being who has tasted genuine presence cannot be satisfied with the hollow substitutes offered by consumer culture. But the ultimate truth goes even deeper. You are not just reclaiming your own freedom, you are participating in the liberation of human consciousness itself. Every moment you choose presence over productivity, meaning over money, authenticity over approval, you are contributing to a fundamental shift in how humanity relates to work, time, and value. You become a living example that another way is possible. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "The future enters into us in order to transform itself in us, long before it happens." The future of human freedom is not something that will be delivered to you by external revolution. It is something you create by the quality of consciousness you bring to this moment. Every time you choose to live from your deepest values rather than your surface fears, you are literally creating a new reality. Imagine waking up tomorrow, not as a victim of circumstances, but as a conscious participant in your own existence. Imagine moving through your day not driven by anxiety about what others expect, but guided by clarity about what you truly value. Imagine working not because you have to, but because you choose to, and knowing the difference transforms everything. The final realization is this: you are not a worker who sometimes has experiences of freedom. You are a free being who sometimes chooses to work. You are not a consumer who occasionally finds meaning. You are a conscious soul who sometimes engages with the marketplace. You are not a product of the economic system. You are a creator of your own reality. The new slavery is subtle, persistent, and deeply entrenched, but it is not invincible. The key has always been in your hands: the awareness to see the cage and the courage to walk toward the open door. Your time is your life, and your life is far too valuable to be spent merely surviving. The world does not need another exhausted worker. It needs a fully alive human being, and that can be you. The question is no longer whether the new slavery exists. The question is, will you continue to live inside it, or will you take back the only thing that has ever truly belonged to you? Your time, your freedom, your irreplaceable, magnificent life? Right now, in this moment, you are free to choose. What will you do with this freedom?